I'm Amber.
And I'm Adrian.
And we're the Knoblogsisters.
Today we're going to do the this or that tag. This is something I found on Goodreads that was just kind of floating around, and there are a bunch of this or that questions. So we're going to go through those. There are 14 of them, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
And we're going to read the question, and then we're each going to give our answer and why.
Yes.
Alright, and so question number 1. Audiobook or book in hand? Adrian, you can answer first.
Okay. I have a hard time with this one because I love having my book in hand. Obviously, this is my bookshelf. I love having physical books. However, audiobooks are nice because I spend a lot of time in my car driving back and forth from school and just in general. So audiobooks are nice because I can read all the time and I don't have to take a break. So I feel like I'd pick audiobook just because it frees up a lot more time when I can be reading.
My answer would probably actually be book in hand. See, I have a lot of e-readers, but I feel like that still counts. I have a lot of e-reader books, like e-books, more than I have on my bookshelf, which is kind of sadly. My bookshelf is pitiful compared to this. So, that's why we film in front of hers. And so, mine is actually book in hand because I like the feeling of I can read this, and if I get distracted, I know I don't have to scroll back to try to find it in the listening. I can just like go back to the last thing that I know I read, and it's a lot easier for me than that. And honestly, book in hand is a lot easier for me since I'm still in school, so it's easier to sneak reading a book than sneak listening to something.
And teachers are more okay with you ignoring them if you're reading a book than messing with your phone.
Yeah, so that's my personal opinion. Number 2. Softcover or hardback? Mine would probably actually be a softcover because I feel like when I'm trying to read and I'm like I read in the bath. I don't know why, it's just very comfortable for me to read in the bathtub. And so when I do that, I hold my book in one hand, and it's a lot easier to do that when I have a softcover book than a hardcover book. And so it's just easier for me to be more convenient, not only for when I'm in the bath, but any other time that I'm reading. I like to hold it with one hand, and that's hard to do with a hardcover book.
I prefer hardcover books because, first of all, I don't know why this bothers me, but when I'm putting things on a bookshelf, paperbacks fall over. And that action of them falling over fills me with a rage that just doesn't make sense. So that makes me angry. Hardcover books stand up all by themselves. It's not a big deal. Also, hardbacks are nice because I read when I'm multitasking.
Are we gonna disagree on almost every single one?
Probably.
That's okay.
Well, we won't disagree on the next one.
That's true.
Anyway, I multitask doing a lot of stuff, so hardcovers are nice for me because they usually stay open on their own. Like, soft covers will, but most of the time, in order for them to stay open on their own, you have to break the spine, and I hate that. I am very anal retentive about breaking the spines of my books. I can't do it. Like, there's some on here that are broken spines, and those were before I started caring, or my husband's.
Or she just read them so many times that it just kind of broke.
Or they're used. There's some that are used that came broken, which sucked. Question 3.
You can read it. Oh, crap. Hello? Bye. Who's that? Kristen. That's gonna get edited out anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Question
Question 3. Question 3 is fiction or nonfiction? We both have the same answer.
We both
on
have
this
the same answer for this one.
Fiction.
Definitely fiction. See, I don't mind nonfiction books, but I despise certain ones. Like, there are some that I'll read, but there aren't very many.
Yeah.
I really like fiction books because it takes me away from real life, and it just allows my imagination to do whatever the crap it wants that day. So that's why I like fiction.
I don't mind nonfiction, but in order to read nonfiction, I have to be really, really interested in the person or the event. Like, I can read nonfiction all the time about World War II and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't bother me at all because it's interesting to me.
Yes.
However, I can't just randomly go to wandering around the nonfiction section and be like, oh, this looks good. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Fiction is just a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah. Number 4, fantasy world or real life issues. For me, honestly, this one, I prefer, no, it really just depends on the day. Because sometimes I like reading a story like Harry Potter that takes place somewhere that I could never go to and that I've never been involved in, and I like imagining that it's there. And I like being involved in something that I know doesn't exist, but I want it to. My Harry Potter addiction is very large. I have a wand, a trademarked wand, Ollivander box, Ginny Weasley wand, collector's edition, just saying. And then there are times that I want to read real life issues, like just books that happen. And so there are times that I enjoy real life issues, and there are times that I enjoy fantasy world, so it really just depends on how I feel.
I'm more apt towards fantasy world. And not necessarily fantasy world, but fantasy setting. Like, I like or fantasy story. Like, it could take place in real places, like places that actually exist, but so long as it's a fantasy, like it doesn't, because now that I'm in college, real life issues, pretty much any real life issue you've read in a book, I've met somebody who's experienced it, and it's really hard for me to read those books and not plug those people into the situations, and that kind of ruins it a little bit. So
I read books where the main character is going through something that I've gone through, and I plug myself into it, and that sucks. So
So I would have to say fantasy world, just because it's not as fun if you're reading and you're picturing somebody you actually know and care about.
Number 5, Harry Potter or Twilight. As I've already said, my Harry Potter addiction is at large. I liked Twilight, but it wasn't my favorite, and Harry Potter is by far one of my favorite book series. So that's my opinion. You've already heard my opinion on Harry Potter, so.
I guess I would probably say Harry Potter also, just because I really enjoyed that one a lot more than I did Twilight. Because Twilight got really carried away in the last book. Like, it just got really dumb in the last book. Versus Harry Potter is 7 books long, and it never got stupid. It was always a really good story.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say Harry Potter.
Next one, number 6, Kindle, iPad, or other. Other reading device, e-reader type thing. I personally like my Kindle because I've had one since like 3 years ago, and so that's where a lot of my books are, and I've tried reading on her Nook and I cannot do it. I mean, I have the app for my iPhone, and so it's not like I don't use the iPad, iPhone app. It's just I prefer the Kindle. So
I prefer Nook. Well, for 2 reasons. One, I have one, so I enjoy my Nook. Plus, she has a Kindle Fire, and I've tried reading books on hers, and I can't do it because it's a backlit screen. It's the same as reading a book on my cell phone. And it hurts my eyes, and I can't do it for long periods of time, and I'm always turning the page on accident. Yeah, I don't like it. Versus my Nook is the first edition, where it's e-ink, and then you have this little bit touchscreen on the bottom that like shuts itself off when you get into the book, and you just use arrows on the side. And I really like that because it's the same thing as reading. To me, it feels like the same thing as reading a physical book, but a lot lighter that I can.
Yeah, and I had the original e-ink display Kindle. I think it was the 4th generation, maybe. It was 6 inches, something like that.
I didn't like that because it didn't have a touch screen on it, and that's
it
what I
had
liked for
0
typing.
touch screen. It had arrows and 4 buttons, and then it had the arrows on the, like, it was very simple. And I had one for 2 years, and then I've had my Kindle Fire for a year. And once I got my Kindle Fire, I didn't use my plain Kindle anymore, so I sold it back to Amazon. But I really like just the Kindle in general. Like, I had the e-ink, and that one was really good. And then I just got the Kindle Fire, so.
Cats are having a staring competition.
I can see that. Number 7, borrow or buy. My personal, I like buying my books, whether they be on my Kindle or in a hardback copy, softback, in my hands copy. I prefer to buy them because if I borrow them and I want to reread them, I have to borrow them again, and it's a big hassle. So I like them being at my disposal whenever I want to read them again. And I don't like time limits on how long it takes me to read. Because sometimes I can read a book in 3 days, sometimes it takes me a month. And so I don't want there to be a, hey, can I have my book back yet type thing. I don't, or just due dates. I just don't like it. So
I would have to say for me it's also buy. Obviously, I buy my books in physical copies. And these aren't even all of my books. I have more books on a TBR shelf that's elsewhere. These are just the books I finished. Yeah, I buy books. I don't like borrowing just because I feel like I have to be really, really careful with, if it's someone else's book, I have to be super careful with it, and I want to return it in the same, if not better condition than I got it in. And then library books, people don't treat those well, and it always makes me really sad.
I hate when I get a book and I borrow it from somebody and all the pages are dog-eared and there's ketchup on it and books are teared.
It looks like they dipped it in
water. I cannot stand getting books in that condition, because I like books that are like the one that Adrian showed you in one of the past books, Ruby Red, how it's in such pristine condition, no pages have ever been folded over.
I think there's like one stain in it from where the cat stepped on it.
Like this is a book in nearly mint condition, and that's how I like to treat my books as well. Like, to where they look like they haven't even been read before, but you know that they have. So
usually you can tell my books have been read because they're full of post-it notes.
Or sticky thingies.
Yeah.
But either way, that's how I just cannot borrow a book. It bothers me. But that costs a lot of money to buy a lot of books.
It does.
It's ridiculous.
It really does.
Number 8.
There's a reason I have an allowance.
Bookstore or online? Adrian, you can answer this one first.
I definitely am online. First of all, we live in an area where there isn't a bookstore
Nope.
near us at all, so it's more convenient to shop online. And on top of that, I like shopping online because it gives me that time that I don't feel like, when I'm in a bookstore, a lot of times I feel like I'm rushed. Like, we're probably going somewhere, that we have to be there by a certain time, like we're gonna go to the movies or something. I feel like I have to hurry, and I don't like it. Versus online, I can browse books. If there's a book I want, they always have it. It's not like, oh, we're out of stock, we'll have to order it for you. That's not. I'm like, well, I can do that myself at home. Why did I come to you for that?
And when we have this thing where if we go into a bookstore, we feel the need to buy all the books.
Yeah, like we can't leave without buying at least one book.
Sometimes two.
Yeah.
It was the hardest thing I'd ever done to go into a bookstore with $20 and come out with nothing. It was the hardest thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
Either way. I'm also online because, as I said earlier, I have the compulsion to buy all the books when I go into a bookstore. And if I shop online, I mean, since I buy most of mine on e-reader, it's so much easier just to go in the store on the Kindle, type it in, oh look, this is $4, I have that in my account, and I just click buy and it's done.
And then you have it instantly. You don't have to
I have it instantly. I don't have to wait for it. I don't have to wait till I get home to read it.
Driving.
And all these things. So it's so much easier on my Kindle. Because as long as I have Wi-Fi, I can get any book I want. And then I can read it at any point in time. It's great. Number 9. Standalone or trilogy? For this one, honestly, it really does depend on how I feel. Because sometimes I'm like, you know what, I'm in a really good mood. I could read 3 books in 2 weeks. I could read all of these books. Like, that's what I did with the selection. The first 2 books of the selection is I knew it was a trilogy. I knew that the third one hadn't come out yet, but I'm like, oh, it'll probably take me a little while to read these. No big deal. I read the first one in 3 days. I read the second one in 1 day. Literally, I bought it at about 9 a.m. Wasn't able to read any of it until about 2 p.m. And then I finished the book by midnight. And then once the third one came out, we actually read that one at the same time.
In 1 day.
In 1 day. As soon as we woke up, we started reading it. And then by midnight that night, we were both done with it.
We call each other about every half hour. Like, did you get to chapter 15 yet?
No? Okay, I won't ruin it. Call me when you get there.
Call me when you get there. We need to talk.
And it was a very good day.
It was. It was a very long day.
Yes, but it really just depends. Because sometimes they're like, I want to read a book that ends after this book. Because sometimes they're like, that was a really good book, but I really have no desire to read the rest, and now I won't know how the series ends. So sometimes there's the good things about standalones. So
I would have to say for me, this also depends on, it doesn't depend on what mood I'm in. It depends on the book. Like we said before, The Shiver series, that's a trilogy. It should have been one book, in my personal opinion. Some
Yes.
people like all 3 books. I don't. I think it should have stopped after 1 because it was a good story. It had a good end. Everything was golden. It was a good ending and it would have made a great standalone.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are books like Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. I kind of wish there was at least a novella. Like that book is a standalone, but I feel like there could have been more.
Yeah.
And there should have been more. At least another
And
couple
then
chapters.
there are times where, like with the Mortal Instruments series, where were 3 and she planned on ending it after 3 and she wrapped them up so pretty with another little bow, and then she kept writing, and we loved that she kept writing.
Yeah, I do.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it works out to keep writing, sometimes it ruins it. It's an author decision.
And sometimes they do it right, sometimes they don't, and sometimes I just want more.
Yes. Okay, next is number 10. Monster read or short and sweet. I actually prefer sometimes short and sweet because I don't have a lot of free time being in high school and being a senior and having all of these extracurricular activities and a job. I don't have that much time to read a monster read, but I read short and sweet and it's cute, and then sometimes I sit down with Goblet of Fire and I read the entire thing. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I don't, but I prefer short and sweet.
In my case, I think I prefer monster read. Short and sweet is nice, but sometimes there's not enough. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a standalone. Some of the trilogies, the books are just so short and it's not enough. I want to keep reading and I like that.
11. Starry-eyed romance or full of action. I actually prefer the starry-eyed romance because I just love that. I loved Meant to Be because there was a lot of I don't know how I can handle this guy, and then you can tell she's falling for him anyway, and it's just cute and it's romantic and I love it.
I would have to say probably starry-eyed romance out of this too, because I am kind of a hopeless romantic. But a starry-eyed romance should, in my personal opinion, should not be all romance. It should have some more stuff in it, and it should have some extra.
It should have
stuff.
arguments and fights and a little bit of action and
Absolutely.
maybe some drama. Like there should be something.
It can be
in there.
it can be super mushy and ooey gooey, but it shouldn't be perfect.
Yeah.
It should have some
It
drama.
should have
some
fights,
action.
arguments,
Should have
drama, action, something that's not just, okay, I could puke from the cuteness that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so we actually agreed on that one. I knew we would, but that's okay. The next one would be 12. Curl up in your Snuggie or bathe in the sun. I personally like curl up in your Snuggie because I like to sit on the couch. I actually have a Snuggie that I do read with. And I like to sit there and I like to read on the couch with, like, on the floor, in the bath, in my room, in bed. I just don't. But when I read outside, I feel like the sun's in my face and I'm going to get an awkward tan line from my book.
I've had that. I've had where I sat in a chair outside with a book in my lap and I had a line across my knees where the book sat.
Yeah, so
It looked really
I
off.
just prefer curl up in your Snuggie.
Yeah. I would have to say also I prefer curl up with your Snuggie because usually if I'm reading, I'm curled up in my bed or tucked in the corner of the couch or something like that. I don't like being out in the sun because I feel like I get sticky really fast because where we live it's really humid.
Very, very
So
humid.
I feel like I'm getting sticky and like I'm wrinkling the pages of my book because they're getting humid too, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to be outside, but I can't read outside.
Mm-mm.
So I have to read indoors, curled up on the couch or something.
Okay, I know we're going to disagree on this one.
Oh,
Number
yeah.
13, hot chocolate or latte? I prefer hot chocolate. I hate coffee. I hate it so much. It's so gross. And I know we're going to disagree because she loves coffee.
I love coffee.
So
I absolutely choose the latte. I love coffee so much, and I miss coffee because I can't have it right now. But I love coffee, and so I'd absolutely choose the latte. My favorite thing in the world is to go to Barnes & Noble where they have a Starbucks inside of it and buy a Starbucks and go curl up on the couch upstairs with my coffee and a book and just sit there. And usually I read about half a book and then I go downstairs, buy it, and take it home. It's usually how that works when I go to a bookstore.
Okay, last but certainly not least, number 14, read the review or decide for yourself. I would prefer to decide but for myself, because if I read the reviews, it clouds my judgment, and some people don't like the same things I like. And so when I read the reviews, I'm like, oh, I can see where they might be coming from. I might not want to read it. They say that this girl's really irritating. I'm going to get irritated too. It's not going to be a good... But that's why I just don't read the reviews until after I finish the book. Because then once I finish the book, I write my own review, and then I read the rest of them to see if we
agree or disagree. Yeah. In my case, I don't know. This is one that's kind of hard for me. Usually it's decide for myself. Like if there's a book that I see, I'm like, I know that plot sounds really interesting. I think I'm going to read that one. Then it's a decide for myself. But when I'm like at a bookstore and I see a book that I'm like, I've never heard of that before. I wonder if it's any good. I open my Goodreads app and I look it up and I look through the reviews. Because there are a lot of like little known books that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about this one. It seems kind of interesting, but I don't want to spend my money on it if it's not going to be something good. So I always go and check reviews when I'm doing that kind of stuff. So it depends on the situation for me.
All right, and I mean, for me, I decide for myself, but... Huh?
You did that.
I know, but I was adding on to what I had already said.